Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's FNM Spotlight. This is my take on a Jund Aristocrats type build without Collective Company. I'm not sure that Collective Company wants to be in this deck or not. I think you'd have to build it differently if you were to do so, because the focal point around this deck is going to be a Hangarback Walker Aristocrats build with Flayer Drone. Ever since Flayer Drone was spoiled, I wanted to build around this card. It seems to have a very powerful ability, a 3 mana for a 3/1 first striker, and whenever a colorless creature enters the battlefield under your control, target opponent loses 1 life. So it's almost like another Zulaport Cutthroat type ability in the deck, and we have a ton of ways to put colorless creatures onto the battlefield. The most powerful one, of course, is Catacomb Sifter, so this one would be 2 colorless creatures, and it also allows all of your creatures when they die to scry, so you just continue to go through your deck. So we are going to go through the Cryptolith Rite strategy, but it's going to be without Loam Dryad. Again, this is going to take a lot of testing to see what the right number of cards are going to be. It's just really tough to put the Loam Dryad in here. I had to cut down a lot of cards I wanted to try, one of which is Matter Reshaper, which is another colorless creature. Again, we could try to go completely a Devoid route or a Thopter Eldrazi route, because there are some cool combinations with this deck. So Collected Company is not going to be our card drawing engine. What's going to be our engine is going to be the Evolutionary Leap and the Duskwatch Recruiter. So only 2 Duskwatch Recruiters. It was my last cut. I don't know if that's the right line of play or not, but it had to be something of 2 of them. You only need to see 1 of, and we have ways to get them back with like Liliana. I don't know if I'm just justifying too much here if we need to go up in both Liliana and Duskwatch Recruiter, but yeah. Smothering Abomination is going to be our major card draw engine. If we get a Smothering Abomination out, whenever we sacrifice a creature, we draw a card. This is going to allow us to, between the Catacomb Sifter and the Smothering Abomination, we are going to go through so many cards in our deck and find the right pieces. Blazing Hellhound is another one of our sack outlets. This card's just phenomenal. I had it in a draft once and I loved it. Had it in the draft with like a lot of the Thopter Engineers and the other one that put out Thopter tokens, and it was so good being able to sacrifice a creature to deal 1 damage to our creature or player. So this guy's great at shooting down planeswalkers, great at shooting down pesky cards, and has a 4/3 body for 4 mana, so that's not bad either. So I'm running 2 of them because we do want to see sack outlets like the Blazing Hellhound, the Evolutionary Leap, and a 1 of Nantuko Husk. So then we have Pia and Kiran Nalaar, who is also a sack outlet, expensive sack outlet, but it does give you the ability to sacrifice at least the Hangarback Walker, which in this deck is our major focal point. So between Cryptolith Rite and a few other tricks in this deck, like the Blisterpod and Eldrazi tokens being able to sacrifice to add mana, we can cast a huge Hangarback Walker and then immediately sack it. What I like about the one little combo in here, and I don't know if we should go up in more of these, is the Thopter Engineer. Thopter Engineer gives all of your artifact creatures haste. So between Hangarback Walker and Thopter Engineer, if you cast a huge Hangarback Walker, say you cast it for 8, you get a 4/4 that can then tap for mana for the Cryptolith Rite. Then you can sacrifice your Hangarback Walker. Actually, you can actually put another counter on Hangarback Walker if you have another mana, up to 9, up to 5/5. Sack it, you get 5 Thopter tokens that then you can tap for mana before you sack them. And so it's just this really good synergy between the two. I almost want to make an entire deck around the Cryptolith Rite, Thopter Engineers, and Hangarback Walkers. But it might just be, I don't know, I guess we could go just in a green-red for that type of strategy. But it's just that the deck wants Zulaport Cutthroat so much. But I'm sure there's some merit to this. I wonder if we have enough Eldrazi. I know there's a 3-mana Eldrazi that puts in a 1/1. Yeah, I'm going to have to try that deck out for another day. I think we can go kind of like a Swarm-type strategy with the Tarkus Command, or even the Reckless Bushwhacker, with using like Thopter Engineers and everything else that just produces those artifact tokens. And they all get haste with the Cryptolith Rite. Yeah, we'll definitely try that out. And I'm sure we can throw that in even, maybe even in the Collected Company shell. Because what's the other Engineer? It's a 3-mana one as well for 2/1 that puts an artifact into play. And then you have you could run a full package of Pia and Kiran Nalaars. And then we could, it's just, even that deck wants to splash black though for this Flayer Drone and Zulaport Cutthroat. I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to. So this is going to be a kind of a hybrid between the three colors. I'm sure there's some merit though to going that strategy. The most interesting deck. Put it in your. If you have a deck idea for that, put it in the comment section below, and maybe we'll put our heads together and see what we can come up with. All right. So the Blisterpod is just our best one drop. When it dies, put out a 1/1. I had the Carrier Thrall in here at one point, but I decided it was one of those that just I had to cut something, so I cut the Carrier Thrall. Onto the mana base, we are going to run the Westvale Abbey still. It puts in Cleric tokens late game, and it turns into a 9/7. I had it in here at first too because it was pretty easy to generate that mana that you needed for the colorless mana for the Mattery Shapers, but I've since cut the Mattery Shapers out of the deck, so I'm not sure how much Westvale Abbey, how useful Westvale Abbey is going to be, other than, of course, just the 9/7 body. A lot of the metagame is adjusting and putting in hate for the Prince, and like in my deck, in my seasons past, I have so much ways to kill it, even though it has indestructible, so I have the Blighted Fens and Slaughter to the Slaughter. And then there's the other one they have to sacrifice 2 creatures. But so Westvale Abbey's not nearly as powerful as when it was during the Pro Tour when people weren't prepared for it. We also have the Llanowar Wastes that can generate the colorless mana. And I had Evolving Wilds and a 1 of Waste at one point, but I've since cut the Waste as well. Just because our mana base at 23, we need as many basic lands to make these Cinder Glades and Smoldering Marshes at least have the ability to come and play untapped and give us enough targets for the Evolving Wilds and the 1 of Pilgrim's Eye. This is another card I'm trying out to see if it's going to be powerful enough in the deck. If not, then we can cut this and maybe bring back in one of the cards that I cut before. But it's another thing that will have haste with the Thopter Engineer. It goes and gets another land, which I think is pretty relevant. But the way that we might be getting land flooded with this deck with the ability to draw so many cards off the Smothering Abomination. Onto the sideboard, we have Eldrazi Obligator. I think that any deck that has a sack outlet should have a gain control outlet. So I'm not sure if this should just be Active Treason or if this is a body with Active Treason. So for 5 mana, you can gain control of a creature, untap it against haste. And as this Eldrazi Obligator has haste itself, so you can grab a pesky creature and then sack it afterwards with your Nantuko Husk or with your Evolutionary Leap or the Blazing Hellhound. And mana should not be a problem with this deck. If anyone's played a Cryptolith Rite deck, you start to get so much mana. Add on, I would say like turn 3 or turn 4. You can generate huge amounts of mana just with a lot of these, especially like Catacomb Sifter, Thopter Engineer type cards. 1 of Vile Redeemer, it's just a card I want to try, especially with as many sack outlets as we play. Nantuko Husk would be the best when you sack everything, then cast Vile Redeemer and get a ton of Eldrazi Scions. And then those can sack with the Flayer Drone, it will bring in a ton of cards. So sack everything. So how this would work, I'm not sure if this is going to be enough. Because you'd want cards like probably like Elvish Visionary, or here is where Carrier Thrall would be wonderful. And maybe this is just another brew for another day, more into that Eldrazi colorless scheme with the Flayer Drones. But so you flash in, you sacrifice everything but your Zulaport Cutthroats and Flayer Drones, and a sack outlet like Nantuko Husk, and then it brings in so say you have like Blisterpods and it's like Thopter Engineer, Hangarback Walkers, things like that. What it does is it brings in a ton of Eldrazi Scions, which then the Flayer Drone triggers, and then the Zulaport Cutthroat triggers when you sacrifice your Vile Redeemer tokens. So that's just and then with the leftover mana too, say you have another Hangarback Walker in your hand, you can cast a Hangarback Walker for huge and then sack it. It triggers the Zulaport Cutthroat, triggers the Flayer Drones, and you just do so much damage. So this might need to be a 1 of in the main board. We'll have to wait and see. It's another card that I want to try to build around. The unfortunate part of this is I think I'd want this just in like that green-red deck that we were talking about earlier. This is where you'd want the black for the Zulaport Cutthroat and the Flayer Drone. So again, we'll have to wait and see if this has merit, the Vile Redeemer. So it's just going to be a 1 of in the sideboard at the moment. Maybe I'll bring it over into the main board and just have another card just that we can test. I don't think you'd want more than a 1 of though. The flash is good though. It's Devoid too. So Devoid right there gets the Flayer Drone. And it's just the potential of this card for just 4 mana is pretty huge. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We'll mess around with it. Then we have Caustic Caterpillar. This is just to get rid of Silk Wraps mainly. So sacrifice it, destroy target artifact or enchantment. We can find it with the Evolutionary Leap and then kill off those pesky Silk Wraps that are taking our Zulaport Cutthroat or our Flayer Drone. I have 2 Warping Wails in the sideboard. They're really in here to counter Languishes. So, and the exile isn't very relevant. There's nothing in the format with 1 toughness or less, maybe opposing Zulaport Cutthroats that we care about killing. But this is mainly in here to counter like a Languish or an Infinite Obliteration or Flaying Tendrils. Something like that that's going to mess up our deck. That's why the Warping Wail is in here. Very underrated card, I would say, at the moment. And the cool thing about Warping Wail is if it's never a dead card because you at least put just an Eldrazi Scion onto the battlefield. And with this deck, it does get a ton of value. So we'll test this out. If we need to go up in Warping Wails, we'll do so. Transgress the Mind is also in here to take out the Languish. I'm maybe starting to think that we can just take out Transgress for more Warping Wails, as that might just be a better game plan against Languish than the Transgress. 2 Fleshbag Marauders to get rid of pesky creatures on our opponent's side. It's also something we can sack. With the Liliana, it's something then we can recur. Liliana is something we'd probably want more of in the deck. I'm just trying out a 1 of at the moment. Again, we're trying to find that sweet spot. We are so spoiled right now with aristocrats. There have been times where you've seen my channel. This is a strategy that I was really big into until the rally aristocrat type decks started getting popular. And of course, I'm rogue deck builder, so when something becomes a popular archetype, that's when I kind of lose interest in the archetype. I'm more of a what could be type person. I mean, going back to, I talk about personality theory a lot on this channel, and I'm an ENFP, which you can go Google and look at those different personality traits that are usually pretty descriptive of that type. And one of what we call like the ENFP's Achilles heel is when like we are more interested in the progression of something, not the completion. And you'll see a lot of ENFPs like work really hard at something, and when they're just right about there, when they finally do perfect it, they lose interest and move on. So anyway, they conquer something, and instead of reaping the rewards, they go back to the basics, go back to square one, and start over with another project. And so a lot of times we get accused of never completing projects or just losing sight of the goal. It's because what makes it fun, what makes it interesting is trying to find the ideas, the connections, the possibilities, and trying to bring it all together. And once it does come into fruition, we just get bored. It's something. It's done, and we need to find a new project. And so that's kind of how the aristocrats were. People had built these very Rally the Ancestors deck. Last Standard was one of the top decks, if not the top deck. It was very good against both Abzan and Jeskai Black. And then, so I just didn't even mess around with Rally after that. So you've seen in the past, though, I've had a hard time having to put in some terrible cards into like an aristocrat shell just because we didn't have anything better. There are so many cards right now you can throw in. I'm not using Carrier Thrall, which I think is amazing in the deck. Collected Company could easily go in this deck. The main reason I'm not using Collected Company is Hangarback Walker. It's a non-bow or no synergy with Hangarback Walker. If you find one off of the Collected Company, it's just a dead card. But I think there's enough targets too. We have 5 more targets, so 5. That's 9 targets that Collected Company cannot really get any value out of. And I like to at least, I think my rule of thumb with Collected Company is at least have 25, 26 targets for it. Oh, actually, there's 10 now with Pia and Kiran Nalaar. And so this one just doesn't quite work with the Coco. Anyway, where was I before I started rambling? Kalitas is really in here for the mirrors. So it's our way of exiling similar base decks. Nissa is a grindy card that puts out plant tokens that I think I just wanted to try in this type of Evolutionary Leap type build. And you can put +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, which is very powerful with Hangarback Walker. This is another card, who knows, you might want more of in the deck. And we already talked about the Fleshbag Marauder. So that's my rambling. We're almost up to 15 minutes. I tried to keep these deck techs around 10, and of course I've gone way over. But let me know what you'd put in this deck. The focal point again is the Flayer Drone. I want to see if this can be powerful enough. There are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, so 12. So we still have 20. Did I count that right? Let's see, 4, 8, 12, 16, 19. 20. Yeah, we have 20 colorless creatures in here, and a lot of them produce more than one colorless creature, especially like the Pia and Kiran Nalaar and the Thopter Engineer will also produce colorless creatures. So I'm thinking the Flayer Drone is going to be pretty good in this deck. Anywho, let me know what you think in the comment section below. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.